Story 1. My ex-husband's grandmother was on her deathbed and had dementia. We came to say goodbye, knowing her time was short, just a couple of weeks at best. When we walked in, she didn't recognize me at first. We all stood around her hospital bed, chatting while she lay there and listened to us talk. About 15 minutes after we arrived, she looked at me, pointed and said, "Don't ever give up. Don't you ever give up." I cried at that moment. I had been struggling with suicidal thoughts regularly and had already attempted it years prior. I was severely depressed, and my marriage was in shambles. What she said that day has never left me. I will never forget it, and I will never give up. Story 2. I didn't eat vegetables much until I started college, but my culinary professor once told us that if we don't like something, it's probably because we haven't tried the best version of it yet. There are so many ways to cook food. You just need to find the version that you actually want. Lentils, however, will always be unappealing to me. Story 3. I visited a park often when my children were young. I would play with them on the swings and slides. An elderly man, perhaps in his mid-70s, was often there with his mother, who was 104 years old at the time. She once spoke to me in a voice so frail that I had to ask her to repeat herself. "I admire you," she said clearly. I was astonished. She had lived for over a century, and she admired me, an ordinary 30-something man. It turns out that she had been watching me as I often took the kids there, pushed them on swings, and fed ducks in the nearby lake. She admired the fact that I was an active father. Now that I am older, I have never forgotten that moment. Story 4. My counselor in rehab told me that if I started drinking again within 2 weeks, I would be drinking as much as I am now. That scared me. I have been sober since 1989. Story 5. I am a massage therapist who focuses on long-term pain relief, post-surgical recovery, and general body issues. I had a client who had broken his back and undergone surgery. He could barely walk and could only shuffle around. I worked with him weekly, and after about a year, he achieved almost complete movement. He told me that he wasn't angry all the time and could actually play with his kids again. I must admit, I cried. Story 6. You've become comfortable in your misery. I hadn't even realized it until my mom said that to me. It made me make significant changes in my life. Story 7. My brother disliked my lifestyle and it erupted into a dissection of me, my past, and basically labeling me as a bad person. I was devastated. Took time to heal, and I will never forget his words. We did make up, but there will always be a lingering discomfort. Story 8. I was leaving a stop on my bread route for the last time, and a young lady told me she would miss the sound of my voice. For some reason, it was always one of my favorite compliments. Story 9. Before he died, my dad asked me why I had dulled myself. I asked him what he meant, and he told me I used to shine so bright, but then one day I suddenly stopped. He said I was the one holding myself back from being the person I should be. Story 10. Minutes after losing my virginity to rape, the person said, "I love you." No one had ever said that to me before. Fast forward a decade, and a bartender told me, "I love you," when she was off work and heavily intoxicated. I don't go to that bar anymore. It's been a couple of weeks, and I'm still reeling from that. I really cannot express how uncomfortable that made me feel. Story 11. Chrissy Wong told me I'd never have a girlfriend. That was in 6th grade. I'm 48 now. You were wrong, Chrissy, but that really hurt. Story 12. Delete her from social media. A genuine friend told me about a girl who was dangerous. My friend was right. It was hard to let that girl go. I almost slipped into the "I can save her" mindset without realizing it. However, my friend saw the truth about that girl. This was the best thing that happened to me recently. Story 13. A friend told me, "You're not too much. They're just not enough for you." I was in a difficult situation, blaming myself for being too emotional, too deep, and too intense. That one sentence helped me stop apologizing for who I am. It has stuck with me ever since. Story 14. The only person you will ever be with for the rest of your life is yourself. Learn to validate yourself. Learn to love yourself. Learn how to be alone. Story 15. My mom advised me during my pregnancy to be consistent. If you tell your child they will receive a spanking or timeout for behavior they know is unacceptable, you must follow through. If you don't, they will learn that your words hold no meaning and will not listen to you. This advice was invaluable because I disciplined my children consistently when they were young, and I did not encounter any major issues as they entered their teenage years. Story 16. The only compliments I have received from women are about my nice eyebrows, nice eyelashes, and nice teeth, which they thought were due to braces and were surprised to learn they are not. Honestly, if a girl compliments my shirt, I will never forget it. Story 17. I had a disagreement with a friend. A stranger riding BART with another friend and me in the East Bay told me that everything will get better. Story 18. In third grade, we had a test on weather for science, focusing on different types of clouds. The day after the test, the teacher called me and a few other students to stand in front of the room. She asked the class if they thought we were all stupid. Apparently, we were the students who received a D or F on the test. She questioned us about whether we had studied and why we performed poorly. I can still remember how embarrassed and uncomfortable the class looked, and I tried to cry quietly as we walked out to physical education afterward. I think I was 7. Story 19. My ex told me, "You're a lot like my mom, but much more resilient." I haven't stopped wondering what was meant by that. A family member also mentioned that I've never committed to anything other than my dog. Joke's on them. I'm back in school, maintaining a 4.0 GPA while promoting at work and moving into a new position that gives me a 45% raise. Story 20. When I was young, an old man told me that when you fall in love with someone, you should fall in love with their eyes. He said that every time he looked into his wife's eyes, it felt like the day they met. Story 21. Don't worry, sister. You and I just haven't met the great loves of our lives yet. We're young and we have time. Even if we don't, we can always live together and have many cats. You're adorable and pragmatic little sister. Story 22. My mom has told me a couple of times that I will fail in life. I have vowed to prove her wrong for saying that. Story 23. At my cousin's wedding, I was talking to another cousin next to the dance floor. A guy I didn't know walked over, kissed my cheek, and said, "You are so pretty," before continuing on his way. My cousin and I laughed. It was so random. Story 24. My daughter and I were reading Charlotte's Web together. She didn't want to read it, but she had to for school, so I suggested we read to each other. We were sitting on the couch by a window. At one point, she looked at me and said, "Mommy, there's a little girl in your eyes." I replied, "Baby, that's you in my eyes." It was the sweetest thing I can recall. I also met a boy at summer camp when I was 10 or 11. After we returned home, I saw him once or twice at the local Salvation Army Club. Then I moved. He was puppy love, if you could even call it that. When I was 26, I ran into him, and the friend I was with said, "Hey, there's Chris." I would have never recognized him. I went up to say hello, and before I could ask, "Remember me?" he said my name and, "I thought I dreamed you. What happened to you?" I explained that I had moved, was recently divorced, and was getting remarried. He mentioned that he was married and had a baby on the way. It was nice to see each other. Someone thought they dreamed me. How cool is that? Story 25. I hear wonderful things from my boyfriend and other people in my life every day. But the quote that has stuck with me the most never even happened in real life. It was a dream I had when I was 13, slipping into depression and anorexia, and it was the most peaceful dream I've ever had. In it, I was walking through a beautiful patch of sunlit birch trees, and I eventually came to what seemed to be a dance studio. The wood inside was smooth and polished, with little glass butterflies in orange and red strung from the ceiling, swaying and casting dapples of light on the floor, where I and several other girls were waiting for our teacher. When she came in, she looked around at all of us, smiled, and said, "You girls are my butterflies." It made me tear up when I woke up, and I'm so glad that I heard that. Even if it didn't happen in the physical realm, the things in our minds are more real than anything else. Story 26. You will have many acquaintances in your life, but if you are lucky, you will be able to count on one hand the number of true friends you have. Story 27. I wish you could see yourself right now from someone who adored me. The love in his eyes is something I will never forget. I felt like an angel. Story 28. My mom told me I left her no choice but to harm herself or run away. That was last Thanksgiving, and she felt that way because the previous summer, I didn't mention to her that the coffee was ready, even though I knew she would want it. Between my full-time, physically demanding job that financially supports her and trying to keep things clean at home, I got overwhelmed and asked her to get her own cup of coffee. I was distant and grouchy and stayed away from her, doing as she wished. She told me that if I was anything but happy, she did not want to see me. All of that made her want to die. Meanwhile, she has abused me since I was about 5 years old. Story 29. I was being forced away from someone I love, crying my eyes out and saying we will never see each other again. He cryptically said, "We will just not like this." Since then, there have been 5 different plot twists in my interpretation of this based on events. Story 30. My father told me there is no point in doing something halfway. If you are going to do it at all, then give it 100%. This advice has changed many things for me. Story 31. A doctor once told me that my feet are chubby and I should drink more water to improve it. I was a child. Story 32. Crush was talking behind my back at an event she invited me to. Turns out she didn't actually want to invite me but invited the friends I happened to be with instead. And she didn't know how to tell me no. It hurt a lot. I probably won't specifically remember it, but because of moments like that, I'm hesitant to hang out with people because I don't want to be a burden to them. Story 33. All the harsh words and destructive criticism came from my mother and not from anyone else in the universe. Story 34. Stranger walks up to me and says, "It was all about eggs and beef." Yes, eggs and beef. Then walks away. I don't know why he did that, but okay. Story 35. My dad is an alcoholic, and when I was about 8 years old, I clearly remember him waking my mom and me in the middle of the night to throw us out of his house. That night, he came face to face with me and screamed, "Nothing here belongs to you, and I want you to leave now." I forgot a lot of what happened while living with him, mostly because my mom protected me, but I will never forget those words or the look on his face. I am still in contact with him, and he knows to reach out only when he is sober, but I feel nothing towards him. Story 36. I met a woman by random chance while delivering mail here in the Midwest, USA. She has lived abroad for the last 20 years but was in town seeing her grandmother. She has lived in 8 different countries and visited over 60. She has lived an incredible life. We have stayed in touch since she left, and one day she told me she has kept a notebook with sayings she has heard from people all over the world that have stuck with her and resonated. Her last entry was, "I'm just out here trying to catch a moment." James Hyatt. That was something I said to her about living life beyond just existing and making the most out of this adventure. So, every day, I am just out here trying to catch a moment. The fact that she added me to a book, no doubt full of amazing people from many countries and cultures, made me feel special. I don't really know why. I do like to write poetry and philosophical writings on life, so maybe I felt it gave me some validation in my writing and philosophy. It may not sound like much, but I picture this notebook full of quips of wisdom from Scotland to Thailand, Tanzania to Panama, and many more countries. Somewhere in that book is a mailman from the United States. Story 37. Honestly, I don't know how to feel about this. One of my coworkers approached me and said, "You disgust me." Naturally, I responded, "Why?" He replied, "I don't know, just your presence. I don't like it." So, apparently I have a disturbing presence or something. Story 38. When I had a significant alcohol problem, I told a girlfriend that I wanted to quit and get sober. She responded, "You don't have a personality when you're not drinking." My distorted thinking led me to believe her words, which delayed my pursuit of real help. It seemed like a small comment, but it lingered in my mind for a long time. Story 39. I had gotten into significant legal trouble and hired a respected lawyer. During a meeting while my case was still ongoing, he told me, "You know, if a few things had gone differently in your life, you could easily be sitting where I am right now." His words impacted me deeply but also motivated me. I still think about it daily. That was one of those moments that felt like a kick in the teeth, leaving me to wonder what I was doing with my life. Story 40. My sister and I had the same job, but I held a higher position and earned a better salary with another company. She cruelly remarked that I only walked around with a clipboard all day. She had not witnessed the times I could hardly walk home, overwhelmed and exhausted from the demands of my job, while also juggling family responsibilities. This unfair and untrue statement, spoken out of jealousy, has always stuck with me. Story 41. It wasn't said to me, but I was in the next room when my mother told my sister that I was conceived because my father's vasectomy had failed. Before you say anything about stragglers, it was done 2 years before I was born, when my mother was pregnant with my sister. Story 42. I was in a really bad place in life using drugs. My girlfriend came over to my place, woke me up screaming and crying, saying that my close friend had taken his own life. My heart sank. I was so numb from tramadol. I only felt anger. I had a deep conversation with him just a few days before, telling him that he must not take his own life, that he had too much to lose. I don't exactly remember the conversation with my girlfriend, but I said something like, "Why are you crying? You barely knew him." And I know I said something else terrible. I don't recall her exact words, but it was really awful. I felt like a monster. I remember how disgusted she looked at me. That look is burned into my memory. After that, I never got the chance to speak with her again or explain myself, which is so terrible because I'm truly an empathetic person otherwise. I love my friends. Story 43. If you're feeling anxious or worried about something, imagine the absolute worst case scenario and then the absolute best case scenario. Usually, reality is somewhere in the middle. I tend to catastrophize, but this perspective has really helped me. Story 44. Anyone who goes out of their way to be around you is not your friend. It is likely that you do not even know them and never will. Story 45. I was about 9 years old, watching my stepdad play volleyball on a weeknight. My 11-year-old brother was there too. We were playing with the other kids in the gym, sitting on the bleachers, and one of those kids kept talking about bum gravy. Ever since then, it has been the grossest word I've heard. Story 46. You are a lost cause, brother. I'm happy your father is deceased and cannot see you, Mom. He's more of my sibling than you, sister. Story 47. Dad called to inform me about Mom's death. He said, "It's been a hard day." Never before or since has he described a day as hard. Story 48. Growing up, there was a time when I was crying about something, and my dad asked, "What do you have to cry about?" On another occasion, my mom was upset with me and said, "You are worthless." After we broke up, my ex told me, "You're so good to me." Story 49. You are an unlovable jerk, said a former partner in a much more colorful manner. I almost ended my life, but the attempt didn't succeed. Now, 10 years later, I am in a new relationship that has lasted 8 years, despite being long distance. We are even considering working for the same company, though in different industries. Story 50. A teacher told me that I was unattractive and lacked grace. It affected me deeply, and I could never forget it. Story 51. After I asked my mom why she didn't love me, she said, "You don't need my love. You have your grandma." My grandma and I were close because I wanted to spend time with her since my mom didn't care about me. My mom had 3 other children she loved, especially my sister. Story 52. When I was in 8th grade, I took a high school math class. I received a B, and my mother told me my sister didn't get a B until she was a junior in high school. My mother and I had a falling out almost exactly a year ago, and during the argument, she kept referencing my sister and how I could learn from her. I shared that story, explaining how I've always been compared to her and that I am tired of it. I was 39 at the time, and that had been stewing for a good 25 years. Story 53. 48 years ago, while driving in a residential neighborhood, a mother mouthed these words to me, "Slow down." 45 years ago, a real estate agent told me, "Here are 2 words I never want you to forget: Mission Oaks." Story 54. I was going through a difficult time in my life and showing signs of mental health issues. I was in my father's truck and asked him, "Does everyone think I'm going crazy?" His only response was, "You can't help someone who won't help themselves." The rest of the ride was quiet. I understand that you need to help yourself, but I learned that day that my dad will never be emotionally available enough for me to open up to him. In that moment, I never felt so alone. Story 55. A friend of mine received a phone call from a colleague. My friend asked me to join him for a bite to eat or a drink afterward. We arrived, and the young man led us into his living room, sat down in an old rocking chair, and indicated he wanted to discuss something. He proceeded to end the friendship because he felt he needed to surround himself with people who would help him grow, claiming my friend was holding him back. I chuckled and glanced at my friend, who looked at me with an embarrassed smile and asked, "Did that just happen?" I smirked and rested my hands on my knees, about to suggest we leave when my friend said, "Are you ready?" I nodded and we departed. That was probably 25 years ago. My friend is now the head of information technology and security for a popular theater chain, while the young man who ended the friendship is still a barista at the same Starbucks. It remains one of the most awkward situations I've experienced. I still mention it when people ask how long we've been friends. I say we've been friends for a few decades, but I think I'm going to end the friendship because I need to surround myself with people who inspire me to be a better man. It always gets a good laugh from him, and we end up telling the story. Story 56. May 4th, 2017. I was dealing with a lot emotionally and told my then wife how much I wanted to die. The words she said back to me were, "Don't talk about it, be about it." Then she left the house. I have dealt with depression my entire life, but that day is the one time I actually tried to end it all. I will never forget those words and how coldly they were spoken. Story 57. My children's dad, my ex, mentioned in a conversation about addressing conflict that he sometimes feels like he is someone's karma. This statement holds a lot of truth and wisdom. He would share insights like that occasionally, and I genuinely appreciate him for it. Story 58. I was laughing and smiling really hard with someone I had a huge crush on. My sister walked up to me and said, "I've never seen you look so ugly as when you laugh like that." 25 years later, every time I am happy, I can't help but stop and refrain from expressing it for fear that I will look hideous to anyone around me. Story 59. My ex said, "I'm going to be just like my dad." Well, he's dead, and I'm alive, so take that, ex-girlfriend. You were wrong. But really, she did tell me that once. I'll never forget it. Story 60. My dad called me a disappointment, though I don't know why it sticks with me. I feel like I don't really care that much. Story 61. Someone told me, "I'm the biggest joke in town, and everyone makes fun of you." The man who said this to me is now on record for a very serious crime. Even if I'm considered a joke in one town, at least I don't have to worry about a reputation for hurting people following me everywhere I go. Story 62. Getting thoroughly criticized by the chairman of my thesis committee during my doctoral qualifying exam. The head of my lab, a quiet and imposing figure, is supposed to sit in the back and not speak. I'm facing a barrage of questions when suddenly, from the back of the room, I hear, "Can you let her finish? This has nothing to do with what she's proposing." My supervisor still can't believe he said that 3 years later. I'll never forget it. However, he has since been promoted and is now everyone's supervisor. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.